Good evening, everyone. Today is Monday, October 1st, 2012. We'd all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to Elmhurst City Hall, and to make this meeting official, I'd ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll, please.
Heza. Here. Gutenkauf. Here. Leader.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Lumsky. Here. York.
Here.
Hipskin.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Levin.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Morley.
Here.
Wagner. Absent. Mulliner.
Here.
13 present, 1 absent.
13 present, 1 absent. We have a quorum. And we go on to our next item, which is recognitions. And we have many people from the museum here today, our award-winning museum. It's 2 special recognitions, and I would ask Director Brian Berghager to meet me at the podium, please.
Well, good evening. It's an honor for me to pay special recognition to Millie Smith this evening, an individual who's volunteered regularly at the Historical Museum for 30 years. Millie, will you please come forward and join us here at the podium? How are you? As I said, Millie has been a volunteer with us for 30 years, and in that time, she's personified the spirit of volunteerism that's evident throughout the entire community of Elmhurst. There's no better model for the meaning of volunteerism than Millie Smith. I want to share with all of you how Millie's volunteer role at the museum cuts across several areas of museum operations. In her time at the museum, Millie cataloged all kinds of artifacts that were donated to the museum. In particular, she applied her knowledge of textiles and fabrics, processing costumes and quilts and other similar items. Her skills as a seamstress were especially welcome at the museum, where she would sew textiles to exhibit mounts. She created special fabric exhibit props, and she did all kinds of other sewing that was necessary at the Historical Museum. She conducted research to answer reference inquiries that came into the museum over those 30 years, particularly inquiries about genealogy. And Millie assisted with all kinds of public programs and events at the Historical Museum. She greeted visitors, helping with kids' activities, and interacting in all kinds of other ways with visitors at the Historical Museum. Millie has also been known to help install and maintain exhibits at the museum by painting, prepping artifacts, packing materials, and doing routine exhibit housekeeping throughout the galleries. These are just a sample of the many, many jobs undertaken by Millie in her tenure at the Historical Museum. All of us on the staff of the museum appreciate Millie for the tremendous amount of work she accomplished each day of this 30-year tenure. However, as much work as that was, it's Millie's spirit and her attitude that stands out in all of our minds at the Historical Museum. And so, Millie, I'm pleased to present this small token to you of the museum's appreciation. Millie, on behalf of the museum, I want to thank you for your long-standing volunteer commitment, a commitment that personifies respect, responsibility, trustworthiness, and service above self. You made a difference in the life of the museum, and you will be missed. So we wish you well in your move to Arizona and in all of your future endeavors. It's also my pleasure this evening to announce 2 awards that were presented to the Historical Museum by the Illinois Association of Museums. The presentation took place on September 21st at the annual meeting of the Illinois Association of Museums, and Lance Tauser, our curator of exhibits, was present to represent the museum and accept those awards at the meeting. At this time, I'd ask Lance and Nancy Wilson, our curator of collections, to please come forward and accept the awards here this evening. While museums have a wide range of potential public programs, exhibits tend to be the predominant form of communication between an audience and the museum. Oftentimes, the public's perception of a museum is based primarily on exhibits and the audience's experiences with those exhibits. Obviously, exhibits play a crucial role in how the public interacts with the museum and how the public feels about any museum in particular. Lance, as curator of exhibits at Elmhurst Historical Museum, is the leader of exhibit teams, and his creativity and eye for detail is always evident throughout every gallery at the Historical Museum. He deserves a great deal of credit for all of the wonderful work that inspires visitors in the museum's galleries. Thank you, Lance. Nancy is the curator of collections and is charged with responsibility for all of those wonderful artifacts that are included in exhibits. Much of her work takes place outside of the galleries. Nonetheless, it contributes greatly to the success of exhibits. I want to mention also how exhibits are a team endeavor that include other members of the museum staff who present exhibit tours to school groups, who generate publicity and attract media attention to what goes on in the exhibit galleries, and who organize educational programs for the public, such as lectures and demonstrations that are related to exhibit themes. All of these activities contribute to how we measure the success of an exhibit. Now, the awards from the Illinois Association of Museums are particularly meaningful because they're made by our colleagues, professionals like us who work day in and day out to serve audiences at their institutions, as well as to improve the perception or images of museums in general. Now, the first award is an award of superior achievement for the museum's Toys in the Hood exhibit. This exhibit explored the history of Chicago area toy manufacturers, and it was a big, big hit with our audiences in the summer of 2011. The awards committee noted that the exhibit used a very creative approach and was, to quote the award, a remarkable partnership with other museums, collectors, and patrons. So Lance, I'd ask you to step forward and accept that award on behalf of the Historical Museum.
Make sure you give me the right one.
The other award is an award of excellence for Letters from Home, an exhibit created at the museum to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the beginning of the Civil War. Now, the committee that awarded this noted that the exhibit was a strong community collaboration, and it was distinct from many other Civil War anniversary exhibits during the year of 2011. For those of you who did not get to see it, Letters from Home was truly a remarkable collaboration between the museum, the Elmhurst Artists Guild, Green Man Theater Troupe, Elmhurst College, and others. So Nancy, I'd ask you to step forward and accept that award on behalf of the museum. So I'd like you all to know that the museum is very honored by this recognition from the Illinois Association of Museums. It means a great deal to us, as I said, and I thank Mayor DeCiani and City Council for the opportunity to share the awards with all of you this evening. So I thank you, and I hope that you will all visit Elmhurst Historical Museum soon, and other museums in the Chicago area. Become museum visitors. It's a great thing to do. Thank you.
Brian, we thank you for your leadership. We also thank the commissioners who are volunteers and serve as leaders for this great institution of the city as well. Mr. Tom Klein and all the commissioners, we appreciate all your help for your leadership. And Millie, go get them in Arizona. We appreciate all your hard work over here. So we'll miss you. Thank you. On our agenda, next on the agenda is item 4. Receipt of written communications and petitions from the public. If there's anyone that has any written communications or petitions, please rise. Present those to Clerk Spencer. Seeing none, I will move on to public forum. And I would ask Clerk Spencer, is anyone signed up tonight for public forum?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have 4 people that have signed up for public forum. Kathy Jordan, 556 Fairfield.
All right, Mrs. Jordan, and naturally, we have 3 minutes, and we
Good
appreciate
evening. My name is Kathy Jordan. I live at 556 Fairfield, and I'm here representing the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation. You're going to go home and have dreams about us. This was not planned. I would like to invite you and the community to our upcoming fundraiser that is going to be held on October 25th. It's called Meet Me at the Fair. It's from 6 to 9 p.m. We are going to have wine tasting, craft beer tasting, and hearty hors d'oeuvres. If you are a member, it costs $45, so membership does have its privileges. And if you are not a member, it is $60. This fundraiser will benefit the educational programs for the one-room schoolhouse and for the museum, the unique and wonderful exhibits that we are now, in my mind, having Elmhurst as a destination. The other thing I'd like to invite you to is the Heritage Day, which is October 13th. It's actually something that the museum is in partnership with the Bensonville Park District. For me, this is like a dream come true because when I was on the Board of Education, we didn't know what we were going to do with the one-room schoolhouse, and many of us had a vision that maybe one day it could be offered to not only children in Elmhurst and the surrounding areas, but throughout other communities. So this could potentially lead us to another Naperville settlement, but maybe a Fisher settlement. I've left the information at your dais, but I'd like to share at the Fisher Farm, there'll be pumpkins, petting zoo, face painting, pony rides, kiddie rides, concessions, live music, Civil War enactments. That costs $5, and children will have a little wrist bracelet, and they'll be able to go on as many rides and as many activities as they'd like. At the one-room schoolhouse, you'll be able to meet Mr. and Mrs. Lincoln. The Conrad Fisher Singers are going to be there to entertain everyone, and period games, spelling bee with the school marm. Those are free. So I invite you all to come out for a wonderful fall activity with your families. I think it's a great partnership between Elmhurst and Bensonville, and it just shows what collaboration can lead to. And I believe on a visionary basis it can be even more. So thank you for your time, and I encourage you to come to the adult activity and to go to the children's activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Jordan, for your leadership.
Next, we have Claude Pagash, 566 West Gladys.
Claude Poggett, 566 West Gladys. Apologize for my appearance. I was unearthing some funding so I could pay the taxes and bills of this town. I was here a couple of weeks ago, and I posed some questions. In that 2 weeks, neither one of my reps, nor any alderman on this council, or any member of the administration so much as called with any reply to those questions. I now pose another question. of what value do you put on the residents of Elmhurst? They come here, they plead their case. Let alone, no matter how they plead their case, they're wrong, you're right. They plead their houses are flooding. We get committees. But it isn't just in recent times that's come about. They told you they didn't like the TIF. They got it anyway. I don't really understand. You must hold some value for them because you tax them. You charge them fees. But I'm becoming a little more and more concerned that we got a majority that believe no matter what is said, they're right and the town is wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, but if questions are posed on how you're going to accomplish something, and there is a complete failure to really address it, it's astonishing. And if the public is totally wrong, and 14 members of this community are totally right, then why even have just 3 minutes? That's the question I really have tonight. If the public asks questions, nobody takes the time, effort to explain how we're getting into the messes we're getting. I've lived here a long time. Others have lived here longer. And they've seen a dramatic change in this government here.
Glad you're coming
They
up for your
really
3
don't
minutes, so you
like
can
what they
wrap it up.
see. Maybe you're not aware of it because, number one, you don't take the time to find out.
Thank you, Claude.
Tamara Brenner, 137 North Caroline.
Tamara Brenner, 137 North Caroline Avenue. With the November 6th general election rapidly approaching and the start of early voting coming up in just 3 weeks on October 22nd, Elmhurst voters should be aware that they will see on their ballots 2 different and distinct referendum questions on the topic of dual duty, whether an individual should or should not be allowed to hold multiple elected public offices at the same time. One question was initiated by DuPage County, and the other was initiated by the city of Elmhurst, and that's the order in which you'll see them on the ballot. The wording on each of the 2 questions is different, and no matter which side of the issue you support, you will probably find that you'll want to answer one question no and the other question yes. So it is really important to read each question carefully. The DuPage County question asks whether Illinois law should permit an individual to hold more than one elected office at a time. This question is advisory only, so no action is required on anybody's part, no matter the results of this public opinion poll. The City of Elmhurst question asks whether elected officials of the City of Elmhurst shall be prohibited from holding more than one elected office at a time. This is a binding question, and if the referendum passes with a yes vote, then it would become the explicit policy of the city that our elected officials hold one and only one elected public office at a time. Personally, I think there are many reasons why one person should hold one and only one elected public office at a time. These include conflict of interest, pension double dipping, and real-life time constraints, among other things. We have the opportunity here to provide clarity for the future. One person, one office at a time. And hopefully we'll see the Elmhurst referendum pass with a yes vote. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Brenner.
Last, we have Todd Benson, 391 River Glen.
Todd Benson, 391 River Glen here in Elmhurst. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilmen, city officials, and my fellow neighbors. Tonight I'm here to invite you on behalf of the York and Villette Business Association, the City of Elmhurst, and the Elmhurst Park District to Elmhurst Fall Fest. It's for boys and girls of all ages, so all of you folks are welcome to attend. It's on Saturday, a little under 2 weeks from today. All across Elmhurst, you'll find some free passes to bring home to the kids for a pony ride, maybe the petting zoo, or something fun. Yes, indeed. But please come on out for that event and support the community. Spring Road just had their Spring Road Day, and that was a huge success. Good weather, good people, and it's a good community event. I want to take advantage of this public forum also this evening to remind all of you on a positive note that this is democracy, and in order to have great democracy, you need to participate. October 9th is the deadline to properly register to vote, to change your registration or file any paperwork on your behalf. Make sure you all abide by that. You can also pull absentee ballots on the beginning on the 10th of October, and early voting begins on the 22nd of October. I really don't care who you vote for. I just encourage all of you to get out and vote. I also want to wish you, Mr. Mayor, good luck and good fortune. I know you can get it done in your campaign for a higher office or countywide office. I wish you well in that endeavor. I also wish all of you up there and other residents in Elmhurst the opportunity and take the advantage of the fact that we'll have an open seat for mayor and that we're going to need somebody to take care of that position to help all of us out. On that note, I wish you all well and a good night. See you at Elmhurst Fall Fest.
Thank you, Mr. Benson.
Todd, what was the date on that? You said
Said in 2 weeks.
October 13th.
Okay.
October 13th on a Saturday beginning at 10 a.m. Details at yorkandvillette.com and the city website.
That was our fourth and last sign-in, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. We will close the public forum at this time and move on to item 6, which is presentation of the Hahn Street Development Project Study Update. Mr. Tracy Cross is here today to give us a follow-up presentation. Mr. Cross and staff, if you would be so kind.
Ready to go? Oh, son of a gun.
The Bears are on Channel 2. Just after our last presentation, we took to heart a number of comments from the council. We also dug a little deeper into the data side of the equation, and tonight's presentation is to provide conclusions and recommendations regarding the highest and best use of what we would call market-supported uses for the Hahn Street property, and to assist you with the goals of the City of Elmhurst redevelopment plan for the North District. I should right now take just a little pause before I get into the guts of our presentation. And I should allude to the fact that we're here to help you. We're here to not direct, not to mandate, but to provide you with a certain level of options and to look specifically upon redevelopment initiatives of the Hahn Street property, which is 137,000 square feet. We are not here to look at the future of the city of Elmhurst. We're not here to look at other development proposals that might be attainable within the North District, because there could be several. But it is the focus and the intention of this presentation to look directly at Hahn Street, which is 137,000 square feet. Between York and Hahn is pretty simple. So what we're doing is we're going to go through the commercial sector, and there were questions raised by a number of council members with regards to the market potential of certain uses that we may not have dug deep enough in. And the first one is the hospitality sector, because there's discussion of whether or not there's potential for a boutique hotel, whether there's potential for any form of hospitality on the Hahn Street property. So what we're doing is we're going to look at elements that generate hospitality or hotel demand, and they're directly related to corporate offices, convention facilities, airports, tourist attractions, and major universities. The demand distribution is business and travel commands close to 3/4 of all revenue generated in the hospitality industry. Leisure and tourists make up another 22%, and then there's some odd component called other. I want to be near mom or something else. When we look at the distribution of hotels in essentially a 12-mile radius of the Han Street property, we find that there's 95 operating entities with close to 17,000 rooms available. So the competitive environment that Han Street would face for any element of hospitality would be extremely intense, meaning that there is availability scattered throughout the suburban area. When we look specifically at Han Street and the hospitality sector, we look at it from a competitive context, not necessarily in the city of Elmhurst, but we look at Han Street as a piece of property that sits where it is, generates traffic from where it is, and looks at it in context of available substitutes in the competitive marketplace. So remember when we said that the leading drivers are business travel and group and convention. So the competitive alignment looks at Downers Grove, Elmhurst, Lombard, Oak Brook Terrace, and there are over 6,200 rooms available. And most all of these properties are located more proximate to major office centers, many of them having direct ties to convention facilities. Now, when we talk about major office facilities, I use something that might be considered a flip remark that's sort of a definition that we kind of banner about in our business. And that is that hotel facilities need to be located proximate to steel and glass. The definition of steel and glass is corporate office space, and that type of facilities. While the North District is close to O'Hare, and Councilman Brom did indicate, well, we're near O'Hare. You have to understand from a competitive environment, there are 15 operating properties in Rosemont alone with 5,400 rooms. So you might be near O'Hare, but you're not near O'Hare relative to Rosemont, which is nearer O'Hare. Leisure and tourism. This is not meant to be a flip remark. It's meant to really put statistics and a thought in everybody's mind. The closest tourist attraction to Elmhurst is the city of Chicago. Morton Arboretum doesn't count. So there are 33,000 rooms in the city of Chicago. So how can the city of Elmhurst, and in particular the Han Street property, compete with the element of competitive intensity that's found in the city? Then we had indicated there was some discussion whether Elmhurst College can be a demand driver. I think you must understand that Elmhurst enrollment is 2,800 full-time students, that 50% of those are commuters. And only 5% emanate from outside the Chicagoland metropolitan area. And their football team only draws 1,200 people a game. So overnight stays from friends and families to Elmhurst College is inadequate. I mean, you're going to have in a radius 18 properties with 3,000 rooms that are available for anyone who has direct ties to Elmhurst College. We move then into the boutique side of the equation, and it's really difficult to understand what others' definitions or ideas of a boutique hotel might be. When you look at revenue streams generated in the boutique hotel industry, they're 68% rooms, their restaurant and lounge are 26%, and other operations are 6%. To have a successful boutique hotel, you've got to have a tremendous level of services, which certainly couldn't be supported by a relatively small room count that might be assigned to the Han Street property. And then you have to look at the last two bullet points, which are very, very important with regards to the overall success of a boutique hotel. It must have a restaurant. I say it has to be preferably centered around a brand name chef or a trendy bar. And then we're less than a block away from. You all answer your own question. The Hahn Street property is less than a block away from what? Moving forward, we took a little liberty here. And that is, our intent was to work on the Hahn Street property, and all of the preceding graphs and charts indicated the lack of feasibility or lack of market support for any form of hospitality. This does not apply to the overall umbrella assigned to the city of Elmhurst. The hotel market might be considered to be relatively strong in this portion of DuPage County, and occupancy levels are beginning to approach and get to the feasible level of over 65%, and rent levels are on the increase. If you had a property that was well endowed in terms of transportation access and nearby, near to convention facilities along Butterfield Road or along Route 83, a hotel in the city of Elmhurst may in fact be feasible. So we are not just dismissing the fact that some form of hospitality may be appropriate in the city of Elmhurst, just not on Hahn Street. We then move to office demand generators, and we look at employment side of the equation. And the office side of the equation begins to say, wait a minute, if I take Elmhurst Memorial Hospital, which moved from its location 6 blocks from Hahn Street to a location that is now 3 miles from Hahn Street, the level of office-related employment begins to decline once you exclude medical services. So white-collar employment, dependent upon the industries that are shown, which are information, real estate, professional services, management, finance, and healthcare. Once you exclude healthcare, Elmhurst city employment only totals 6,700 workers. In DuPage County as a whole, you have 170,000 workers. So Elmhurst as an entity only accounts for 4.1% of total non-healthcare related office employment. And you can look at the vacancies in office related employment once the hospital moved from its former location to areas to the south, where all of a sudden the vacancies that occurred in the office sector increase ever so proportionately upward. So when we look at other components of the office market, you find, and I'm sure some of you may have read something in Cranes that was published today. This is sort of a reiteration of our last presentation, and Cranes sort of brought it to the forefront in their Monday edition. The suburbs, and especially in and around Oak Brook and where we are in the city of Elmhurst, are the weakest market in terms of office employment outside of the northwestern suburbs. We're supporting 22% vacancies. That level of vacancies has not dropped below the 20% mark for over 4 years, I'm sorry. And it is not likely to improve significantly near term. Most of the new development is occurring in the suburban market, farther to the west along the I-88 corridor towards the Lombard-Lisle-Naperville corridor. So Elmhurst in its own right, and especially Hahn Street in its own right, can't support significant office development at Hahn Street at all, or in other portions of the city of Elmhurst for an extended period of time until market balance is restored. Here's a vacant commercial property currently within the city of Elmhurst, and focusing specifically on city center. Someone may argue that we inflated the numbers when we included 135 and 149 North Addison. It was not our intent to bias anything, okay? This just shows you that there are 59,800 square feet of vacant office space in city center, excluding future development along North Addison Avenue. In the retail sector, there's over 22,000 square feet excluding North Addison. So we're beginning to find out some weakness that exists within the context of not only the office and retail market, but it exists within the existing market today. The residential sector, just to move kind of quickly through this and answer Alderman Gutenkopf's question about why does apartments go up in terms of vacancies, will help you out a little bit here. This is trends in single-family closing, and there was some argument of my house didn't go down by 26%. Yours may have, but mine didn't. In the city of Elmhurst, values since 2007 have declined in the single-family sector by 26%. So you can begin to see, even though the total number is staying pretty much the same from peak to what we would call today's trough, prices have actually eroded by 26%. The chart on the left shows that movement in terms of price, and we go all the way back to 1998. There may be some sporadic activity in the city of Elmhurst in terms of new permit activity recently. That's in the new construction sector. It is not necessarily near nor necessarily applicable to the on-street property. It may be a bona fide mode that's saying Elmhurst is on its road of recovery, but is it existing in other parts of the market other than in and near the downtown area? Month supply, when you start to move over 500,000, you're having a 10.3 month supply. A balanced market in the single-family sector would be anywhere between 3 and 4 months supply. Overall, we have a 7% months of supply currently available on market based upon closing activity over the last 3 years. A similar trend line is shown in the townhome and condominium sector, and this is somewhat an aberration. The 2012's closing carried a median sales price of $155,000. If you really want to look at the closings that occurred in 2011 versus peak, you will find out that prices in that sector have declined by about 18 to 20%. So there is considerable weakness throughout the entire market within the city of Elmhurst in terms of price erosion and, in fact, in most instances, volume erosion. This is a month's supply that's available in the condominium sector, and when you look at what could be built possibly on Hahn Street, you look at the $250,000 to $300,000 and over, and in that sector of the market, you're dealing with an average months of inventory of available for sale of about 16 to 18 months. This helps Alderman Gutenkopf. What we showed you last time was a chart that included all vacant units, including vacant units in newer projects that had yet to reach stabilization. Okay, so if I open something, I open a 180 unit apartment development, on day one, 180 units are vacant. Okay, so that kind of helps a little bit. Yes, there's a modest aberration in terms of vacancies moving upward during the 2006-2007 period. That's reflective of the hotness in the for sale market and movement from renter ownership from renter to ownership housing on the basis of the strength of the market, and as we all know today, the influence of subprime and other elements that induced for sale demand to start to peak and not reflecting the true undercurrents of what demand was in the market. As soon as the for sale market started its downturn, the vacancy rates in suburban Chicago declined dramatically, And right now, one could say unequivocally that the apartment market throughout the suburban area is in an extremely tight market condition, with vacancies among stabilized projects falling below 4%. Recommendations, how do you put all this together? What we're going to do is make a put to all of you. We are not going to tell you, you have to do this, you have to do that, or you're going to turn into salt. What we're going to provide you are specific alternatives of what may be applicable to the Hahn Street property, and it's up to you to decide what you want to do. And to remember, one of the key elements here, when you talk amongst all of yourselves or in a public forum, is who's going to come to the table from the developer's standpoint and build this. Here are the recommendations. You can do 20 single-family homes on Hahn Street, about. They'll be on 5,000 square foot lots. They could be priced from $600,000 to about $775,000. And in order for a developer or a builder to get out of that area, he would have to sell 0.8 a month to achieve a 24-month sellout. That will yield an overall dollar volume on Hahn Street of about $13.6 million. There's another alternative. You could develop 36 row homes on Hahn Street at 1,800 to 2,400 square feet at 301 to 350. And in order to get out within 24 months, you can price them, or you have to achieve 1.5 units per month at this price point. If prices were to increase, sales velocities would go down. It's called Economics 1A. And it goes back to Milton Friedman, who I have an altar in my foyer too, but that's another point of discussion. The condominium market. You folks, I mean, it's your decision. You can wait on Hahn Street. You can wait, from today to what we anticipate market recovery in the condominium sector will occur, and the financial market would be willing to re-enter the market, let alone the developer, but the developer's not going to enter the market unless he has a financial partner. And from what we understand with our bank lenders and others who are on the financial side of the equation, they're going to stay away from the condominium market for at least 4 more years, regardless of the strength that's inherent within that market. So what we did was provide a scenario looking to a 2016 environment and say, yeah, you can do 90 units on Hahn Street, but to do 90 units and to get out within 36 months at a volume of 2.5 a month, you have to be priced at $200,000 to $284,000, which is doable in many aspects. The potential revenue yield on that community would be about $22 million. I should add that there's a little game we can play here, and it's not intent to be flip or any other element such as that. Let's assume for the moment that we raise prices by $50,000 from what's suggested here. The volumes would drop to about 1.5, between 1 and 1.5. That extends the marketing life of Hahn Street condominium program between 60 and 90 months. That's 5 years to, ugly, to almost 7 years. And you can look at communities right now that are actually on their 5th year of trying to sell out. Finally, there's the apartment side of the equation. And here we presented 2 alternatives. One is a 200 unit community between 550 square feet and 1,100 square feet. The second one is slightly larger units in the 750 to 1,200 square foot range. The rental rates that could be attained with absorption within a short 15-month period range from $1,300 upwards to $1,950. A 175 unit program at the end of a 5-year period could generate in excess of $35 million on the revenue stream. And alternative one, which is smaller units, could generate at the sale of the complex at year 5 approximately $40 million. Again, I must reiterate that we are not making recommendations that are conclusionary. We are presenting alternatives regarding the highest and best use of the Han Street property. And as you can tell from our aspect, unbiased, that the best potential from the residential standpoint falls in the apartment rental sector. The apartment rental sector, or upwards of 150 plus or minus units, also drives what could be done in the retail side of the equation. And when you drop back to the vacancy rate shown in retails in city center right now, you would consider it to be a weak market. But if I had a backdrop of 150 plus minus apartment units, you then could support other uses of retail components at its base. Not necessarily integral to its base, but maybe the apartment units or some other form of residential are set back from York Street so that the retail component could in fact be standalone along York Street. So that's one recommendation relative to the potential of retail. Other potentials of retail are viewed as what I criticized last time of the gorilla in the room being Oak Brook. It is very, very, very difficult to compete for other uses, whether it be in the clothing, whether it be in department store goods or other elements, to open shops in downtown Elmhurst that would be potentially competitive or chewed up competitively by Oak Brook Center. And there's one thing in the retail sector that you have to clearly understand. Retail location decisions made by retailers are gravitational in nature. In other words, you see Burger King next to McDonald's. You see Coldwater Creek next to Chico's, or vice versa. You see Sur La Table next to Crate and Barrel. So they force a gravitational element that downtown Elmhurst and Han Street in particular has no basis to draw a gravitational force in the retail sector. So you're limited to specialty use retailers and or those that can be supported by a residential backdrop that is behind it. Finally, and a comment here is made, which is, I think, a very important comment. And I face this situation all the time whenever we go before villages relative to the future potential of apartment development within their community. Apartment development forms an incubator to future residents in the for sale sector of Elmhurst. You have to understand that. In other words, a 28-year-old married couple, childless, living in an apartment community in downtown Elmhurst becomes the principal buyer of a single-family home later on in Elmhurst. So the apartment community, in fact, incubates future strength of the market in the for sale sector for an extended period of time, and that is perpetual. Once that young couple moves out to a single-family home in Elmhurst, they are replaced by another couple, which incubates. So the incubation factor must be considered in your vision, too, of the practicalities and the realities of what actually occurs in the marketplace. Your turn. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Some good information, and I think as we are looking to finish actually assembling, we've got some other properties that we're actually looking at trying to put everything in order, which will, I think, dictate also how this will all work out. But in the meantime, we've got some, I think, good information that is be very helpful for this council and future councils to make some important decisions for the future of our downtown, especially this project. So, Any questions or discussion? Alderman Palumski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for coming tonight and for the additional information. I have a question about the two alternatives for apartments that you discussed. One with a rate of $1,300 to $1,600 a month, and the other one with $1,500 to $1,950 a month. I was wondering if you could talk about the differences between those tenants, maybe what some of the differences in spending habits may be, or how that could translate into tax dollars.
There's no real difference. In other words, if you took the middle of each of those alternatives, they're the same unit types. All we did was force the units downward in footage, given the level of opportunity that does exist in the studio or efficiency category. So in other words, when you see 750 on the alternatives 2, that starts with a 1-bedroom. When you see alternative 1, the 550 starts with a studio or an efficiency apartment. That's the essence. That's the difference. They're both equal from a market standpoint. There's higher revenue on a rent per square foot that can be generated from smaller units under alternative 1. But there's no difference in quality, there's no difference, it's just unit sizes and the introduction of a studio apartment under alternative 1.
I think my question is more, for example, maybe the income may be higher for somebody unless it is just 2 tenants. I'm just wondering if they're
Well, modestly
drawing
higher.
different. I mean, you're drawing people that might be spending
Well-
more on specific.
Yeah, at $1,300, we're dealing with incomes that are in excess, even at the smaller unit size, in excess of $50,000. Okay. I should add a comment, kind of a sidebar. I don't know if anybody's ever heard the comment of the $50,000 millionaire. People that earn $50,000 that are 27, 28 years of age spend more on retail goods than somebody that earns $150,000. Very interesting little twist. It's kind of a retail thing that people banner around, and you can see it. Yes.
Very interesting. Alderman Brand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And once again, Mr. Cross, thanks for coming out and presenting to us. You referenced some of my comments from the last time that we spoke and you presented, and I wanted to make sure it was understood on what was meant at that time, and also have a couple questions from you. I think the point that I wanted to drive home last presentation, as well as at this point, is that this parcel is very important. We, the City of Elmhurst residents, have spent a lot of money pulling together the properties here. What I was hoping to see from your presentation is out-of-the-box ideas. And my commentary last time was exactly that. The boutique hotel, I'm not an expert to say if it would or would not be successful in this location. I thought one of my fellow aldermen presented that idea, and I think a few others reiterated it. I thought that that was an out-of-the-box idea that would appropriate to be evaluated for this location. I was disappointed to see last time that there was one slide that really had no facts behind it, pretty much dismissing the idea altogether. Here tonight, I appreciate the additional facts in regards to the hospitality arena, as well as specifically the boutique arena and how you believe it wouldn't be appropriate for this location. What I want to ask you is, from the standpoint of this location, the proposed or the recommendations that you have before us is pretty straightforward, I'll say. Condos, apartments, retail, a combination of those. Have you considered any other type of venues, if you would, entertainment district or anything along those lines, the out-of-box ideas that I spoke to before and I'm reiterating tonight? Have you looked at any of those ideas, and would it be appropriate here? Alderman Leader, years ago now, I think, made the statement on this location of, you know, this needs to be a spider web to attract people off of North Avenue to visit. I personally, and I think Alderman Leader would concur, apartment complex really wouldn't do that attraction. Now, we're just two novice sitting up here on the dais, so I'm not saying either of us is correct. But the amount of money and effort that we put here, I was looking for an evaluation of above and beyond the typical build-ups in a property like this. So I ask you, has that been considered? And if so, what was your evaluation on that? And the last piece is the gorilla in the room. I gave examples to that last time. I think other communities have done well, even though they surround Oak Brook. And I still strongly believe that. Because I think that they are able to do what we have not been able to do, and I don't know the rationale on why. It might be because we just haven't taken that initiative or taken that risk, but other communities have done that.
Alderman Brown, Mr. Grabowski would like to answer your question.
Yeah, I believe I can answer that question. We didn't hire Mr. Cross to come in and generate numbers of ideas out of the box, so to speak. We asked him to come in and tell us within what can be built there, in his opinion, as he's an expert in working with other developers, the highest and best use for that.
Highest and best use long-term or near-term, or both?
I would say both, because you're looking at something that can be financed and built sooner than later. As you heard him say earlier today, we can wait. You know, there's a residential market out there that may come back in 4 years. And that's obviously a project that would be there long-term.
Okay, I appreciate it, City Manager Grabowski. My understanding was coming into this that we would look at all avenues, and that would be the feedback we would be getting from Mr. Cross. Me personally, and not here to debate it at this time, but I do know other communities are building apartment complexes, and that might be the solution to today. I'm concerned on, is that the solution long-term? Is that something that Elmhurst could sustain in this location? Or is that something that is going to be a big box with a lot of vacancies in the future? Because we are building this for not only near-term, but for future use. And referencing Alderman Leader once again, I think this is something that we're hoping that will be there for 50 to 100 years. So I want to make sure we're taking that into consideration.
And as a follow-up to that, and Mr. Cross, maybe you can explain this slide again with the sale of the residential in year 5. That's more than
Well, that's just either sustaining it as another apartment development and sold to another apartment developer, or yielding its potential as an apartment conversion to condominium form. I should add that one of the things that we knew going into this analysis is Elmhurst has an incredibly strong location. So over time, with development in terms of greenfield development extending farther and farther to the west, the apartment community or apartment demand or its potential as a condominium conversion will only get better. You have no competition to the east of you. None. You're blocked by zoning in terms of Oak Brook, Hinsdale. There is looming competition, which in Oak Brook Terrace on the acrylic property. I mean, it could pop one day, but that's sort of a long way off. But given its far east location, Elmhurst is in a very strong, advantageous position to capture not only the apartment market today, the apartment market in the future, and the potential as a conversion to condominium form in the future. Relative to turning left off of North Avenue and watching people drive by and having an attraction of sort, like an entertainment district or whatever, I would rather roll the dice and not roll the dice with something that is actually secure and have 175 households coming to city center to live every single day. That's a point of destination, in my opinion, not a fountain on North Avenue.
Very good, very good. I wanted to add also, we've got several retail merchants that have multiple locations, including one that actually has a location in Arlington Heights. And City Manager Gabrowski and I happened to have lunch the other day at that fine establishment, and we asked him, how do you like Elmhurst? How do you like, your other location? He goes, Pete, he goes, Elmhurst is a great place. He goes, but we need more density above us. He goes, in Arlington Heights, we have 300-400 units above us, and because of that, our sales are nearly 2 to 3 times what we do in Elmhurst. Same size restaurant, same number of employees. So I think it's important that we realize, not only for our residents, as you mentioned, incubator, this is a great tool for that, but also for our merchants, for success, we need to have that mixture, that combination. So it's good to hear this because it's important. We want to have success. We want to set this downtown up and this development up for success in the future and have something that's viable and it's going to be sustaining for many, many years. Alderman Dunn, and I'll go to Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Cross, I was wondering if you have any experience on in a central business district trying to define a proper balance between owner-occupied units versus rentals, and what would be the key drivers there. 100% rental is probably not the answer. 100% owned is probably not the answer, but somewhere in between is the right mix for a town, or a town like Elmhurst, and what would be some of the parameters that would weigh into what that proper balance would be, if you could comment on that.
I'll try. I understand the question, okay. A downtown environment, especially with the condominium market that has gone downward as fast as it has, reverts to rental first in almost an 80-20 proportion, simply because the end consumer will not take a risk that his investment cannot be protected in the ownership sector of the market. Over time, once the downtown environment is secured as a safe place for investment, the reciprocal begins to take hold. So you might run 20-80 in favor of rentals. At the end of the day, 20 or 30 years from now, you might be 75-25 in favor of ownership. So depends on when you ask.
So the health of the housing market is the key driver, not elements of what's in the central business district.
For the most part, it is. It's a health. And you have to understand that the tenants and the owners are effectively almost the same people. Almost the same. You get a little bit older profile in the ownership sector of the market. But remember I said that renters become owners traditionally, and they still will, except if you're in the city of Chicago, where renters might be renters forever.
Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Cross, for clarifying some of the points from your previous presentation. I have 2 comments and a question. So my first comment is Naperville is building a 130-unit boutique hotel in downtown. Naperville is surrounded by hotel developments, and I just wanted to put that out there. And my second comment is I think the DuPage Convention and Visitors Bureau would take issue with your statement that the biggest tourist attraction here is downtown Chicago. Chicago tourism and Elmhurst, DuPage County tourism are different animals. People don't stay in DuPage County because they want to be downtown Chicago and vice versa. So I don't think that's a fair comparison. Since I work in a tourism-fueled industry, I think I know a little bit of where I speak. But my question has to do with this particular slide, and I think I'd like you to explore a little bit more how you envision the ownership of this apartment building, should the city choose to hire a developer to build an apartment building. How do you see that ownership operating? Will the developer keep the building? How does the city receive income from the property at that point? A conversion to condos could potentially yield the revenue that you've outlined. Are you thinking the city would go into the landlord business and then the city would sell the condos? Where do we come out? How do we come out from this sort of a scenario?
It depends on the negotiation with the builder/developer, and our impression is all of these product lines will work from a developer standpoint and to be developer held. There's a question of whether or not there might be certain regulations, whether it be construction elements or some parking aspects that might force the city's participation to be greater than to be a sole developer-held entity. So our envision is we think these things work from a developer-held only. If the city wants to participate, that's a whole nother question, which we're not to answer. Okay. Let me also drop back for just a second. And I, people use words that just, a boutique hotel in Naperville. It's a Holiday Inn Express.
Not the downtown building, it's not.
Yes, it is. Marquette Properties is one of our clients. It's a Holiday Inn Express. And in answer to your question, whether they got hotels all over the place. Well, within a 4-mile radius of the Marquette property, there are 18 hotels, 4 miles. They have 2,400 rooms. Within a 4-mile radius of the Hahn Street property, there are also 18 properties. They have 3,600 rooms. So the intensity of hotel development in and around city center, from a supply side standpoint, is 1.5 times that of a 4-mile radius of downtown Naperville. Downtown Naperville, in terms of Naperville, in terms of white-collar office employment, is 2.5 times that of the city of Elmhurst. The incomes in Naperville are 20% higher than they are in Elmhurst.
Per capita incomes?
Median household.
I think you have to factor in the same square mile radius.
I'm sorry?
You have to factor in the same square mile radius if you're talking about Naperville. If you're going to talk about Elmhurst, you're going to have to loop in Oak Brook.
Well, I don't cheat with statistics, and I can, I could skew anything, but I don't.
If you're going to talk about a 4-mile radius, you need to talk about a 4-mile radius for both communities to make it comparable.
Alderman Pezza.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few questions also. As long as we're on this impact of the 4-mile radius situation, we had the impact of the Oak Brook Gorilla impacting retail. We've got the impact of the hotels, so we shouldn't have a hotel. What about the impact of, within maybe a 2-mile radius, another community, 2 neighboring communities, building similar, 7-story, 250-unit, almost identically described apartment buildings? What would the impact be there?
The demand potential on an annual basis is in the eastern portion of DuPage County is about 700 units per year.
So when Oak Brook and Villa Park each build their own 250-unit
That's 500.
luxury
That's 500.
building, it's
That's 500.
not going to have any impact on us whatsoever. These things are going to go like
No, you
hotcakes.
might get some slide upwards of the vacancy rate, and it might return to what one would call a balanced and healthy condition, rather than a tight condition.
Then the next question is, if you could give some background information as to supporting who is it you think will pay $1,950 a month for one of these units? Where will they come from? Why will they come here? Little bit of information on that, because right now you can rent a home for less than that. So I guess I'd like to understand why we think and who we think it will be, where they're going to come from, and what will support this guesstimate.
Okay. Look at employment levels at Elmhurst Memorial Hospital for one, of people that earn or employees that earn $50,000 or more. You can begin to look there, and that renter who is now residing probably at Elm Creek in apartments that were built 15 to 18 years ago. So there is an element of new supply and the newness of new inventory. 10 years ago, right? 10, not 15. The other aspect is there is a very significant portion of the market that is disenfranchised from product that is now being built in the city of Chicago that is at $3 a foot. $3.30 a foot and new pro forma rates of new apartments going up in the city. So there is an element of those individuals who were or could be considered to be city dwellers emanating from the city. There is also turnover from the existing stock of apartments that are found throughout the eastern portion of DuPage County. In example, let me just see if I have that number. Yeah, I do have that number. There are something like 60,000, and don't hold me to this, apartment units in eastern DuPage County. Turnover within those units alone will provide a source of demand for a project within the city of Elmhurst. So they will, in effect, come from all over. Okay.
So it'll be like chess game. They're just coming from other apartments, potentially even in Elmhurst. They're going to break, end their lease over at Elm Creek and just come to the newer building.
It's possible, but then Elm Creek would go from 0% vacancies to a balanced condition.
I am not getting
Just
that.
as an example, okay? If Elm Creek has a very tight market condition and you take renters from them and they wind up to be in a balanced market condition of 95% occupancy, there's no harm, no foul.
So I guess, can you then describe to me who, demographically, who these people are going to be? A description of who and what the people are going to be. Is it going to be single people? Is it going to be people who want Hawthorne School? Is it going to be Elmhurst College, like my kids did? One-bedroom apartment means one bed and 2 futons, cheaper than a dorm room. Who is it that you perceive is going to be taking these?
Principally, it will be singles, aged between 26 and 32 years of age. Young couples, both married and unrelated couples, living together, as well as some component of the empty nester moving out of a for sale product into a rental alternative. So the primary market in terms of a demographic characteristic is 1-person, 2-person, non-family households, together aged between 25 and 35, as well as between 55 and 64.
And what did you say their average income would have to be to?
50,000 is where you start.
Okay, thank you.
11:11.
You did say, Mr. Cross, the statistics don't lie. Is that the?
I don't lie with them.
Oh, all right. I appreciate the information you've brought tonight, and I think it makes things, personally to me, very clear. I think last time I wasn't on the council then, but Hahn Street was a long-planned project. It dragged on to the point that by the time we were ready to launch, the financial markets were such that we couldn't get the development off the ground, and that's why we have a project that's still sitting there. I think you've done an excellent job of preparing us for what the realities of the market are, and from my perspective, it doesn't matter what we want. In part, you've told us what will work there, but it's also what a bank will finance and what a developer will come in and do. So it seems to me that we're looking at developing an RFP that will ask people to come in, and the developers will respond only if they think it's a project that can be not only, they're not looking at it so much as a benefit for the city, but a benefit for themselves. So I'm not afraid of rental. I really think that bringing a density of people downtown is going to be the best thing we can do for our downtown. If there's a condo conversion in the future, that's up to the developer that brings that in, depending on what constraints the city has. In a small scale rent to people who are in this market level in the city. This is a market level where you have very few problem tenants. And if is a landlord, if you're concerned about someone throwing, 5 people in an apartment, you put a restriction on there and you say it's a 2-bedroom and who's going to be living there, and if you have more people, then that's a problem. I hope that we as a city council heed what we've been shown here, evaluate it, and try to move forward to turn our Han Street property, which is a key piece of property, into something that's productive in the near term, that the market has shown through these kinds of statistics is going to be successful, and get this project moving forward.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Brown.
Thank you. I want to go along the lines of Han Street turning into a residential development. It seems like, Mr. Krause, from the information you provided us, that you believe strongly that it would be a successful development, even long-term, for this location. If you would, does that mean, and I don't know how to phrase this without steering maybe the answer, does that mean that this would be such a high-demand location to do residential apartments that there wouldn't be any need to incent any developers to come to this location to build? Because it seems like all the data that you presented tonight shows that this is definitely the direction to go. And if that's the case, to me, that would mean that, we'll have people chomping on the bit to come and build at this location. Is that a fair assessment?
No, God, no. Chomping at the bit. They will support $1.88 a foot at 850 square feet, or $1.79 at 950 square feet. If there's certain elements that you force as a city, well, we want to have 5-to-1 parking. Well, you're going to participate. I use that as an extreme, but I'm telling you that I can go back to Orland Park and they wanted certain things, and guess what? They're participating. Lock, stock, and barrel, they're participating. Financing it, gonna own it, maybe. Ask for a capital contribution from the developer that winds up to be probably 10% of the total construction venue. So the more you want in terms of a vision standpoint relative to certain and jeopardizing that element, the more you need to participate.
Thank you. With that, you included, I think, as one of the recommendations, the retail portion, and the retail would only be sustained if it went along with the apartments. Is there a reason why the square footage range you provided was 20,000 to maximum 30,000? Is that due to your assessment of Oak Brook, et cetera?
It's in part due to the assessment of Oak Brook and finding a hole in the market of what those retail users that might be supported on Han Street. You might have a 10,000 or a 5,600 square foot pub, or something on the order of what is it? Or especially grocer, even though, you know, you have the big gorilla coming north. A specialty grocer might be able to go in there, or a specialty food purveyor may be able to go in there. But when you look at other uses, you certainly don't want a nail salon and an insurance agent and a real estate agent fronting on York. So we kept the uses of the retail component purely as retail, not in the personal services or office-related categories, because our thought is that you wanted some element that will yield tax revenue to the city. And 30,000 is about how much you could front along York in almost maximum.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Mr. Cross, we appreciate you coming out today and giving us this thorough presentation, and we appreciate the options that are market-driven.
Yep. Let me make a comment, a final comment,
Sure.
please.
Sure.
Squint your eyes. If I go through this in a really quick fashion, that's the whole North District, folks. Thank you very much.
What was that again, Mr. Cross? That was the whole what?
The whole North District, meaning that all of these uses could be incorporated, not just on Han, all of them.
Uh-huh.
Huh?
Thank you.
That was free.
Very good. Mr. Cross, an authority in this market-driven economy as to land use, and we appreciate your time and expertise. We'll move on in our agenda to announcements. Anyone with announcements? Alderman York.
Thank you. As if we don't have enough stuff to do on October 13th, we've got to go down to the Spring Road thing, and then we've got a historical museum. We're going to cram a bike ride into there. So the Elmhurst Bike Task Force is having an elected officials bike ride on the north side of Elmhurst. That's Saturday, October 13th, 1:30 p.m. Public is welcome to come and ride along too. Helmets will be required, and we'll start here at City Hall at 1:30. About a 10-mile bike ride around, kind of showing the good things and the bad things in biking in the area, and we'll have some cider and cookies afterwards. Thank you.
Very nice. Alderman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Alderman Palumski and myself will be holding a Third Ward Town Hall meeting. This will be Thursday, October 11th at Angelo's at the second floor, starting at 7 o'clock.
Very good. Anybody else? Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tomorrow night at the Elmhurst Public Library, starting at 7 p.m., the Cool Cities Coalition is presenting a program called Green Your Home, Green Your Wallet, how an energy-efficient home saves money, improves your comfort level, and cuts your carbon footprint. They're working with Energy Impact Illinois, which is the recipient of a federal grant to help homeowners look at ways to improve energy usage within their home, and also Cub Energy Saver. So I hope people are able to attend this program. All the attendees will receive a free CFL compact fluorescent light bulb.
Very nice. Clerk Spencer?
I know we heard this earlier this evening, but you can't make it too big of a reminder or remind you too many times. Last day for voter registration is October 9th. You can register here at City Hall on the second floor, administration, from 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday.
Very good. Anyone else? Okay. We'll move on to our consent agenda. And at this time, I would ask if anyone has a question or may want to vote no on any particular item, to please indicate that now. Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull 3 items. Item M, item N, and item U.
M, N, and U. Okay. Alderman Kennedy, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor, item G, please.
Item G is in George.
Okay.
All right. Alderman Pezza.
Item O.
Item O. Anyone else? All right, at this time, I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve the contents of the consent agenda, less items G, M, N, O, and U. Alderman Levin, with a motion. Second by Alderman Kennedy. Clerk Spencer, if you'd be so kind to call the roll, please.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Worley.
Aye.
Wagner, absent. Kohler.
Aye.
Pezza.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Pipskin.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent. The consent agenda passes, minus items G, M, N, O, and U. And at this time, I ask for Clerk Spencer to read the recommendation for item G, please.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Works and Buildings Committee that the proposal in the amount of $74,500 from Lucity, Inc. to provide professional asset management software be accepted, and that the city attorney be authorized to draft a resolution approving a contract with Lucity, Inc. of Overland Park, Kansas. Respectfully submitted, Public Works and Buildings Committee, signed by Jim Kennedy, Chairman, Robert Dunn, Vice Chairman, Chris Healy, and unsigned by Diane Gutenkopf.
And at this time, I ask for a motion and a second to put this recommendation on the floor, please. Mr. Chairman, Kennedy with a motion, second by Vice Chairman Dunn. Discussion, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We just like to pull this back to committee. We have a little bit more work to do on this piece of business here, so we're just going to take it back, work on it, and we'll be back in 2 weeks, probably.
To move it back, or just
Make a motion.
a motion to refer back to committee?
Motion to refer, yes, I'd like to.
Motion to refer back,
to committee,
second
please.
by Alderman Dunn. All in favor by voice vote, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed, say no. We'll move that back to committee. And on to item M as in Mary. It's another recommendation. Clerk Spencer, if you'd be so kind.
I am. It is therefore the recommendation of the Finance, Council Affairs, and Administrative Services Committee that the City Council direct the City Attorney to prepare the appropriate ordinance to change the City of Elmhurst fiscal year from commencing on the first day of May each year to commencing to the first day of January each year, effective January 1, 2014, and allowing for an 8-month fiscal year from May 1, 2013 to December 31, 2013.
And at this time,
Respectfully submitted and signed by Stephen W. Hipskin, Chairman, Kevin L. York, Vice Chairman, Mark Mulliner, and Scott Levin.
And at this time, I ask for a motion and a second to put this item on the floor, please. Chairman Ipskin, Vice Chairman York, discussion. Chairman Ipskin.
Discussion.
Alderman Gutenkopf.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I wanted to point out that this is a topic that the City Council has been discussing for at least 6 years, because it was something that was before us when I was first elected. So I just wanted to reflect the hard work of former Alderman George Sapaniak and Maura Moriarty for bringing this to our attention during their tenure as alderman, and that while I appreciate that it's been brought forward more recently, it has been something the city has been wrestling with for quite a long time. It's great to see a resolution to this. It has been challenging for the City Council to work on budgeting and passing the tax levy on 2 separate calendars. This will resolve that issue, and I want to put a shout out to the 2 aldermen who really worked hard years ago to start this process.
Thank you, Alderman. Any other discussion or questions? Alderman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since this item has been pulled, I do want to ask the committee a question on this from the standpoint of when it was reviewed, way back when. The concern was from a financial impact, that it would be too costly to change over our fiscal calendar. Is there a reason why now it is less of a financial impact? And if so, what is that rationale? I personally, back then, as well as now, I'm glad to see this move forward. I think it is needed, will help all of us on the dais and any future aldermen to assist with the budget process. But has there been a change in the financial impact of moving over software, et cetera, to make this happen?
There really, the cost has been pretty linear. If you think back 6 years ago, where really our fund balances were going down, it wasn't the right time to spend the approximate $100,000 that this is going to cost. We budgeted, we put in the 5-year plan, we looked at it, we evaluated over years. The timing is right, as long as the city council votes tonight on it. And as Alderman Gutenkopf pointed out, thanks for bringing this up years ago. I think the real thanks is going to be about 2 years from now to the finance committee, or to the finance department within the city. That's a shout out to you, Marilyn and Tom, who isn't here, and all the other people that support the city in that department, because it is a difficult change. You know, it's taking a 12-year or 12-month calendar, subjecting an 8-month. It's gonna be tricky for us over the next 2 years, but we're gonna get it, and then it's gonna be in sync and easier for us on the dais, and easier for the public to understand how we're allocating money, spending money, and that type of thing. So, to answer your question, no, the cost really hasn't. It's been pretty linear, just the normal increase in costs of labor and that type of thing. But it's something it's time to do, and we're putting it forward.
Thank you, Mr.
Great,
Chairman.
thank you. Money well spent in this case.
Vice Chairman York.
And to add what Alderman Hiskin said too, I think that in the past couple of years, our software provider has made some enhancements to their program that makes this whole process a lot easier and less cumbersome too. So, I'm certain that's a critical element in the timing of this whole decision.
Very good. Okay. Any other discussion or questions, Alderman Healy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I figured as long as we're giving shout-outs on this project to former aldermen and city staff, I think it's appropriate to give shout-outs to Alderman Morley and York, who put the referral through to get it done, but also the Finance Committee, the current Finance Committee, to tackle the issue along with city staff and get the issue here before us tonight so we can vote on it and make the change. So, thank you.
Thank you. Here, any other discussion, questions? Hearing none, ask, actually, we can do this by voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. Report carries. Item N is another recommendation. Clerk Spencer, if you please read the recommendation.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Finance, Council Affairs, and Administrative Services Committee that the City Council accept the proposal for a 5-year contract from Board Docs at $9,000 per year to provide a paperless agenda system, and that the city attorney be authorized to prepare the appropriate resolution. Respectfully submitted by Finance, Council Affairs, and Administrative Services Committee, signed by Stephen W. Hipskin, Chairman, Kevin L. York, Vice Chairman, Mark Mulliner, and Scott M. Levin.
And at this time, I ask for a motion and a second. Put it on the floor, please. Vice Chairman York with the second from Chairman Hipskin. Discussion?
We'd like to pull this report back to committee for further discussion. We've got a little bit more work to do on it. Thank you.
Okay, motion to pull back to committee, second. All in favor to pull back to committee, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Goes back to committee. Item O is an ordinance. Clerk Spencer, if you'll please be so kind to read the ordinance, please.
An ordinance approving the 25th Amendment to real estate purchase contract for the purchase of the real property commonly known as 260 North York Street, Elmhurst, Illinois. Paul, I.
And at this time, I ask for a motion and a second to put this particular item on the floor, please. Alderman Pezza with a motion. Second by Alderman Brand. Discussion? Alderman Pezza.
Yes, just once again, I do not support the terms behind the ordinance, so I do not support the ordinance this evening.
Very good. Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, I'd ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll, please.
Pezza.
No.
Graham.
Aye.
Polumsky.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
Healy.
No.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Morley.
Aye.
Wagner, absent. Mulliner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
No.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
10 ayes, 3 nays, and 1 absent.
10 ayes, 3 nays, 1 absent. The ordinance passes, and we move on to item U, another ordinance. Clerk Spencer, would be so kind to read the ordinance, please.
An ordinance denying front yard setback and lot coverage variations for the property commonly known as 130 North Larch Avenue, Elmhurst. It's Callahan property.
And at this time, entertain a motion and a second to put this item on the floor, please. Chairman Morley with a motion, Vice Chairman Palumski with a second. A discussion, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an ordinance codifying the denial of a front yard setback and lot coverage variation application from the applicant. This is a slight procedural change from what we've done in the past at the recommendation of the city attorney. We don't get many denials out of our committee, but when this one came up, it was the recommendation of the city attorney based on recent case law, recent 5-7 years, that we put forth an ordinance that puts the denial of the application on record. I would be happy to answer any questions, or city attorney can add to that if that's what the question's about.
We're good. Alderman Gutenkopf, question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I pulled this item because I really want to express my extreme dissatisfaction with the entire process that this family went through seeking the variance to this house they want to put a front porch on. This family met with city staff prior to starting the project. Staff identified the porch as a reasonable request, so they moved forward. They hired an architect and they drafted plans. They presented this to the zoning commission. The commission approved the project, and this project then moved to the Development Planning and Zoning Committee. DPZ visited the home, inspecting the site, and gave the homeowners the impression that they felt this request was still reasonable. As they were discussing this, DPC decided that they needed to address some underlying zoning code issues. So the homeowner withdrew their request. 9 months later, when it appeared that nothing was moving forward to revisit the underlying zoning code issue, the homeowners decided to seek resolution to this because they were sitting on plans and had expended a considerable amount of money on a project that they thought was reasonable. They requested that the committee bring this project forward again so they could seek resolution to the issue. As you can see, their request was denied a full 12 months, an entire year from the beginning of this process to add a front porch to their house. While I understand the underlying conflict here, which addresses some issues about total lot coverage and the potential for someone to build a new house to their 30%, only to come back to the city shortly thereafter and add more onto their house, this hasn't really been addressed by the committee. And we as a council haven't seen any resolution to the code review. And I am here to stress that while I understand the strict limits of the city's ordinances that address this denial, I'm incredibly disappointed that the chair of the zoning committee hasn't reached resolution on this issue. I don't know why not, and I am strongly encouraging the committee chair to put this code review forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Any other questions, discussion, Mr. Chairman?
I do have a question. I missed what Alderman Gutenkopf said about what has not been addressed by this committee toward the end of her speech there. I misheard. I did not hear what she said. I'm asking her if she can repeat what specifically has not been addressed by the committee.
Alderman Gutenkopf? Okay.
When this project was initially tabled, it was under the auspices of addressing underlying zoning code that prohibits the lot coverage or addresses some potential drainage issues with a property. The homeowner was told to put this request on hold so that the committee could address the zoning issue. The homeowner sat for 9 months waiting for you to deal with this so that they could come back to you with this request. After 9 months, they decided that they'd waited long enough and wanted resolution. It's this incredible time lag, and the fact that in the intervening 9 months between the time that this was tabled and the time that the homeowner requested this be readdressed, that the city council hasn't seen a report out of your committee that addresses the underlying issue that you caused them to table this project in the first place.
Alderman Hipskin.
Point of order, is there a motion to put this back on?
We don't need a motion to discuss whether or not we're going to approve an ordinance, and this is part of the discussion of this ordinance approval.
Okay, so there's no motion to overturn?
There's a motion to approve the ordinance, and that's why I pulled this to talk about it.
You're not, I'm just, you're not satisfied with, I'm just trying to get,
I don't understand what you don't understand, Alderman Hipskin.
you don't want a motion to take this back to committee or re-look at, I mean.
Okay, I'll motion that we put this back to committee.
Point of order. It's an ordinance, out of order. We need to vote on it tonight.
Thanks. Okay.
I don't
that's all I
know
wanted.
if it was an amendment to, I don't know that a motion to refer is ever out of order if it gets a second. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud from chapter 2, I think you could refer it back if you wanted to, if it had a second.
By unanimous consent.
By unanimous consent only.
I thought it was 3/4.
It doesn't have a second at the moment, so I don't know that it matters. So I think what's on the dais is the ordinance.
Very good. All right, we have no second. The motion fails. Mr.
Any
Chairman.
discussion?
Yes.
I'd like to address some of the points, although I won't speak for others. Yes, it's true that this applicant did get help from city staff filling it out. I don't know if city staff ever conveyed to the applicant that this was a reasonable request. I think it was laid out to the applicant that this was a process that would be followed and there would be a conclusion. But to say that city staff led the applicant down the road that this was going to get approved or denied, I think it's reaching. Secondly, I can speak for myself and the rest of my committee members. We were at the meeting where we held on-site. We actually had 3 separate meetings about this application for variance. And at no time did we, at that meeting, both the discussion at the site and then we moved back in committee, still in committee, back to City Hall to sit down and discuss it. At no time did we lead the applicant to believe that this was a reasonable request that somehow would lead them to believe that an approval was pending. So I disagree with those 2 points. As far as it being put on hold, yes, the application was put on hold. We did not tell the applicant to put it on hold. We gave them the option. The applicant knew, based on discussion of committee meetings that they attended, that it was apparent that the conclusion of the committee was going to be to deny the request. But looking at all options for this applicant, it was discussed the possibility of looking into a text amendment, and also it was brought up at committee that there were pending stormwater issues that had not been addressed by the stormwater committee, and if this was affected by that, we didn't want to put the cart before the horse. Well, as it turns out, and that everyone is aware of how long it took for us to get the information out of the stormwater committee, and that's fine. They're doing a tough job, and we don't want them to rush anything. About the time that we were getting that information, the applicant approached city staff and asked for an up or down vote, basically. And that's where we are today. That's the timeline we're at today, and that's how we got here.
Very good. Alderman Plumsky, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add a little bit too. When we met as a committee originally, the reason why we didn't feel that we could approve this was the criteria that states that without this variance, the resident couldn't reasonably enjoy their property. Yet, I think, I'll speak for myself anyway, but I believe the other committee members agree that their request they're requesting a front porch did look nice. It fit with the neighborhood. It wasn't a big jump in the actual footprint, but that maybe with, if we looked at this some other way, possibly not particularly at their case, if for some reason this, we had a reason to back it up with a text amendment, perhaps the Stormwater Committee could have come up with an example that if a property owner has a percentage of permeable surface in relation to an addition, that maybe that would be a reason for somebody to build on, or perhaps, and I talked several times with Dan about this, maybe there could be a separate process for somebody wanting to put on a front porch, because right now, the way our code is written, the footprint of your home is defined by a porch when it is covered, but not when it is open. So essentially, even though you have an existing footprint, it counts if there's an overhang versus if there isn't. So we thought maybe that could be redefined. So we left it essentially, we could say no, or we could wait, and maybe somehow the request would apply in another manner if we could find a different fit for it, because it seemed like a reasonable request, however, it didn't meet our criteria.
Alderman Pezza.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I saw Alderman
I'm sorry.
Leader wanted.
Alderman Leader, would you like to speak real quick?
Thank you,
We'll go to Alderman Pezza. I apologize.
To me, this, in the end, is a matter of lot coverage. And I will never vote to allow a house in Elmhurst to occupy more than 30% of the lot. Thank you.
Alderman Pezza.
Thank you. I can shed a little bit of light on this because it is a First Ward resident, and I was also contacted by the resident and told what she told me. So basically, I do not dispute the findings of the committee. I don't dispute it at all. And the issue, I believe, lies with the resident is the piece that, the waiting piece. And there was waiting, but then nothing ever happened. So I would like to request that on behalf of not just that one resident, but for the future, the discussion does take place regarding this whole front porch issue. We never heard about it again. I'm not sure when it's going to come back or if it's going to come back, but I think it's something worthy of putting back and looking into. And if there's a way it can be addressed without setting a precedent and without affecting stormwater and all those other things, why it was denied, then I think it would be great if we could revisit it, and hopefully in a timely fashion. That I believe is the concern of the resident.
Very good. Okay. Anybody else with questions or discussion, Mr. Chairman?
That's fine with me. I'll go back to something that Mayor Marcucci told me once, is that referrals don't necessarily have to be in writing. And certainly if they come up on the dais, in fact, the front porch discussion did grow out of this application. So we'd be more than happy to put it on our agenda and, provide our findings to the council.
Very good. Just for a point of clarification, if that porch was not covered, would that qualify?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I was addressing some of the timeline issues, but Alderman Polumsky pointed out why it was denied. One of the things that we did do is we actually worked with the applicant on two other options that they could do. One would be uncovered, and the other would be a trellis. Either one would not be considered part of the coverage, and that would have worked.
Okay. Very good. All righty. Good discussion, and if I hear another discussion, I'd ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll, please.
Morley.
Aye.
Polumsky.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Gibson.
Aye.
Ely.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Wagner is absent. Mulliner.
Aye.
Pezza.
Aye.
Gudenkauf.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent. The ordinance passes. We move on to item 9, reports and recommendation of appointed and elected officials. And before I go on to my report, I would like to say that we are going to move the citizen survey because of our time to our next meeting on the 17th. So we have more time to discuss and take a look at that. But update from myself, the big update that I would like to announce tonight is that the groundbreaking for Mariano's is going to be Friday, October 12th at 8:30 a.m. at Mariano's at the Elmhurst Ford site. And we will be out there, hopefully all in force, all aldermen, city council members, clerk, treasurer, city manager, city attorney. Everybody participated in this with shovels, celebrating a great 8:30 a.m. A great opportunity to bring a great business in our community, over 400 jobs, 450 jobs, and I think just a phenomenal destination retailer that we're so excited about to see them kind of get off the finish line or the starting line really quick and hopefully get into the chute as quickly as possible for next spring. So we are excited about that. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is I think, I know I was driving around Elmhurst today and I saw a lot of ComEd trucks out there putting fiber in and lines in, and I think a lot of smart grid activity going on, and that's a good thing on a sunny day when we see these guys out here, developing our infrastructure. City Manager Grabowski? Go ahead.
Two quick things, if I
Sure,
could.
sure.
One, we had the pleasure of celebrating another 35-year anniversary for an employee. Ralph Westendorf in the Public Works Department recently celebrated 35 years. We appreciate his service. And the second thing, the York Street project is moving along on schedule. We appreciate everyone's patience in there and slowing down while the construction activities happen. Thank you.
Good, excellent. And with that, anybody else? Okay, move on to our next item, which is, I think, a pretty important item. It's the resolution approving our new police chief. I think we've got, a lot to be proud of. We've selected a very, very fine individual who's very, very qualified and capable to lead this department. And with that, I'd ask for a motion in a second to put this on the floor, please. Chairman Kennedy with a motion. Alderman Healy with a second, and discussion. Hearing none, I would ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll, please.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Levin. Levin.
Aye.
Morley.
Aye.
Wagner, absent. Mulliner.
Aye.
Hesse.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 1 nay, or 0 nays and 1 absent. The resolution passes, and Mr. Ruth will be sworn in on November the 5th, I believe. So we will have a ceremony here at City Hall, swearing in our new chief. So exciting times, some changes, but I think we've got some very, very good people that have succeeded here, as including our city manager, who came on not too long ago, and our city attorney who came on 3.5 years ago
now.
So all good though, all great things happening here in Elmhurst and under great leadership. So I appreciate everyone's support. Item 11, other business. Anyone with other business? Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I have a very interesting item under other business. As everyone knows, the city is interested in building a mixed-use parking deck along Addison Street, and that the current zoning for the downtown limits the height of buildings to 4 stories. I recently learned that the real estate group that has been involved with building this parking deck, NAI Hiffman, is currently advertising office and retail space for lease in the building. This is not necessarily a bad thing because we have projected a mixed-use development for this property. What I found particularly interesting is that they're advertising a building height of 65 feet, and they've got floor plans laid out, and their marketing flyer talks about something that hasn't even been before the zoning commission, much less the committee, much less city hall approval. And I'm really disconcerted by this. I'm not entirely clear why they're assuming that we're going to grant them something that is clearly outside the bounds of our zoning code before we've even talked about it publicly. So I bring this up under other business because I think this is an important thing that residents need to know. I think it's an important misstep in the process of granting them approval, and I think it's time that we dealt with this publicly as a city council. 65 feet is something that they need to come before the zoning commission and the development planning and zoning committee, and they shouldn't be advertising a building that we have not approved. And I'm very disappointed by it, and it's out there in the public. So I want to bring that up under other business.
Very good, Alderman. I know Senator Jaworski would like to reply to that.
Yes, thank you. They absolutely understand that any height variance would have to go before the Zoning and Planning Commission and then before City Council. The marketing piece that you pointed out was in response to us discussing, which we've talked about in the public, about the possibility of adding office space to that. As we've talked about that, we've talked about the need to add parking for that, for what the existing RDA has, which is 4 stories, to that. So their marketing piece that you had was their efforts to try to get a tenant for the office space so that they can come back to us and we can continue those discussions.
That's great, but shouldn't we have approved it first? Shouldn't they have come to us for zoning review first?
There's no guarantee of any approval of 65 feet in that brochure, and it's certainly a question of, is it the cart before the horse or not? But they didn't want to go through the zoning and planning process if there was no chance they were going to have a tenant.
So they're going to come to us with a tenant pre-approved so that we'll be hamstrung? We got a tenant,
No.
now you got to approve our building?
No.
I just think this is part of this ongoing discussion of what comes first, and I fully believe that the city process, that going through the zoning process comes first. And I don't mean to get into a big argument with you up here in the dais, but I think this is something the entire city council needs to deal with.
Alderman Gutenkoff, you're entitled to your opinion, and we appreciate that, but this is a council of 15 elected officials that vote, and we're all entitled to our opinion. So we gave them instruction to come back with some options, so. Very good. Anybody else have questions or discussion for other business? And actually, this is the time where we're going to plug aldermen. When we pull items, this is the time to do that instead of pulling an item that we're not going to debate over, just to give a quick heads up on that as well.
Mr. Mayor, I don't understand what you're talking about. Could you please clarify that comment?
Yeah, I'm on Alderman Hipskin. It's taking the floor. Alderman York, I apologize.
Thank you, Your Honor. Tonight on our consent agenda, items H, A, and J, I did have an opportunity to talk with a couple of the committee members today, and I just wanted to make it clear to the public that even though the contracts, and this relates to the CIPP, the lining project, and the sewer cleaning and televising project, even though those contracts or services are less than the budgeted amount, the full budgeted amount will be exhausted for those services, which will mean extra services versus the savings going into the general fund. So I just wanted to, make that clear that we're going to utilize all the money that was budgeted, not just what the contract amounts are for. And I think it's important that people know that. These are two very important things in our community, and I just want everybody to understand that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. All right. Alderman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, you pointed out in regards to giving kudos to other aldermen or anyone for that matter and not pulling the agenda item. Excuse me. And I definitely agree with that. Other business, though, I would respectfully disagree, is not the agenda item that it should be done under. It should be done under announcements. I think this is a confusion that we've had here on the council, not only this council, but my whole tenure, on what the utilization of other business should be used for. And if I may make this request to City Attorney Storino to maybe provide his legal opinion on what other business should be used for, because it seems like everything under the sun gets thrown under other business when, at least when I was instructed, it was very limited to the scope that other business should be utilized for. So if I could please make that request to City Attorney Storino, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, ask motion to adjourn, please. Alderman Hipsky with a motion, Alderman Morley with a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.